All right, we are going to go over Lesson 2, Poetic Devices, Sensory Language. So the term we need to remember right now is imagery, which are words and phrases that appeal to one or more of the five senses. So they're words and phrases that may have to do with sight, smell, hearing, so sound, taste, and feel, touch. One common characteristic among almost every poem is the use of sensory language to create imagery, words and phrases that appeal to one or more of the five senses. Writers of poems and prose use imagery to create mental pictures and associations in the reader's mind. For example, a story that describes the smell, sight, taste, and texture of a chocolate chip cookies fresh out of the oven uses imagery. So here are some examples of what imagery might look like in a story or a poem. So for smell, it might say the enticing aroma of cookies filled the entire house. For taste, sweet, flavorful, chocolatey, goodness filled my mouth as I took a bite. Sight, the cookies were perfectly plump and round, slightly brown around the edges. Then touch, the warm cookie melted in my mouth, and I licked the gooey remnant of chocolate off my fingers. So read the following poem. What examples of imagery do you see? To which of the five senses does the poem appeal? All right, so we have Bamboo Groove by Matsuo Basho. Song of the Cuckoo. In the grove of great bamboos, moonlight seeping through. Can you picture the scene of the poem? This short poem uses rich imagery to appeal to the senses of hearing and sight. The phrase "song of the cuckoo" gives auditory imagery, so appealing to your sense of hearing. And the phrase "grove of the great bamboos" and "moonlight seeping through" gives a visual image, appealing to the sense of sight. Okay, so grove of great bamboos gives you a sight of like great bamboo stalks. Moonlight seeping through, you can imagine the glow of the moon seeping through this little jungle or forest of great bamboos. And the phrases grove of great bamboos and moonlight seeping through give visual imagery, so appearing to the sense of sight. Though this poem contains few words, the imagery allows the reader to form a mental picture of the scene. All right, so let's read this poem and answer the questions. All right, so read the poem Travel and then answer the question that follows. Travel by Edna St. Vincent Millay. The railroad track is miles away, and the day is loud with voices speaking. Yet there isn't a train goes by all day, but I hear its whistle shrieking. So as you're reading, I want you to pay attention to the sensory images here. So right away, I can tell they're appearing to my sense of hearing because it says the day is loud with voices speaking. And it also says, but I hear whistle shrieking. So I can kind of imagine what all of this is going to sound like. It's like a busy railroad track with whistles and people talking. So all night there isn't a train goes by, though the night is still for sleep and dreaming. But I see the cinders red on the sky and hear its engine steaming. So again, I see a contrast between these two stanzas. During the day, it seems like it's loud and voices are speaking and there's whistles shrieking and it's just a busy place to be. But at night, there isn't a train that goes by, though the night is still for sleep and dreaming. So it's quiet. So there's a big contrast between these two stanzas. However, in the cinders red on the sky, so whenever the sun starts coming up, the red sun coming up, in the morning, the sunrise makes the sky all sometimes red and beautiful. That's what they're referring to. And here it's engine steaming, so the trains are starting to roll again. My heart is warm with friends I make, and better friends I will not be knowing. Yet there isn't a train I wouldn't take, no matter where it's going. All right, so it says select the phrase from the poem that contain visual imagery, so you can see this rather than hear it or smell it or taste it. So whistle shrieking, sleeping and dreaming, or cinders red on the sky. So consider which one of these answers appeals to the sense of sight instead of hearing or smell or taste. And then go on to number 2. So we have the poem we just read. It says select 3 phrases from the poem that contain auditory imagery. And auditory means you can hear it. All right, so we have a whistle shrieking, I wouldn't take, engine steaming, sleeping and dreaming, or voices speaking. All right, so which of these would appeal to your hearing, what you hear? I'll eliminate one of these for you. I can turn it on. Sleeping and dreaming is not auditory, so it has to be, you have 3 different phrases that you need to choose here, so it has to be one of the remaining phrases. All right, so pause and work on that, and then let's go to the next question. Based on the poem as a whole, and specifically the last 2 lines, what message is the speaker trying to communicate? So our keyword is message. So let's look at the last 2 lines. It says, yet there isn't a train I wouldn't take, no matter where it's going. All right, so let's see. If there isn't a train I wouldn't take, no matter where it's going. So is the message that we get too distracted? We get distracted too easily? That the journey is more important than the destination? That people can underestimate technology, or that people get lost easily? So I think it's important to maybe read the rest of this stanza. It says, my heart is warm with friends I make, and better friends I'll not be knowing. There isn't a train I wouldn't take, no matter where it's going. So right here it's kind of focusing on trains. What do trains do? They take you places. So think about that as some imagery to answer this question. So I'm going to eliminate some. It's not about getting distracted. It's not about technology. So which one of these has the best message that could go with this poem? That the journey is more important than the destination, like the friends you make and the things you do in your life is more important than the very end, like where you end up, or that people get lost easily. So work on that, and then let's move on. It says the following poem uses rich imagery and creative elements. The capitalization, punctuation, and word placement in this poem is intentional. That means they did it on purpose. As you read, visualize the poem and think about how the imagery in the poem creates feeling. Your Little Voice by E.E. Cummings. So what they're saying up here is that when you see poems that are formatted like this, like have like big gaps in certain places, they did it on purpose to help create that image in your mind. All right, so the title is Your Little Voice. It says, your little voice over the wires came leaping, and I felt suddenly dizzy with the jostling and shouting of merry flowers. We skipping high-heeled flames curtsied before my eyes, or twinkling over to my side. Looked up with impertinently exquisite faces. Floating hands were laid upon me. I was whirled and tossed into delicious dancing, up, up, with the pale, important stars and the humorous moon. Dear girl, how I was crazy, how I cried when I heard over time, and tide and death, leaping sweetly your voice. All right, so let's read down here. It says, as you can tell, this poem is very imaginative and expressive. The imagery and even the word placement reflect feelings of the speaker. Your little voice creatively uses imagery of sight, hearing, and touch. The speaker describes the jostling and shouting of merry flowers, while normally we would not associate flowers with the sound of shouting. Also, the speaker describes skipping high-heeled flames, giving the reader a specific image of the movement of the flames. The speaker uses the imagery of being whirled and tossed into delicious dancing to reflect his feelings. So it says, look at the last several lines of the poem, starting with Dear Girl. Do you see a shift in the focus of emotions expressed? Whereas at the beginning of the poem, the speaker seems joyous and happy, the last lines of the poem indicate that he has lost someone close to him. So that's important. The words cried and death give us a clue about the speaker's loss. The last 3 lines of the poem tell us that the speaker still has a memory of the sweet girl's voice. All right, and this picture I think also helps. So we have like an ear, and we've got, they're listening and they're like seeing and hearing all of these beautiful things. So let's read it one more time. Your little voice over the wires came leaping, and I felt suddenly dizzy. The jostling and shouting of merry flowers, we skipping high-heeled flames, curtsied before my eyes, or twinkling over to my side. Looked up with impertinently exquisite faces. Floating hands were laid upon me. I was whirled and tossed into delicious dancing, up, up, with the pale, important stars and the humorous moon. Dear girl, how I was crazy, how I cried when I heard over time, and tide and death, leaping sweetly, your voice. All right, so it says read the poem and then answer the questions that follow. What feelings are created by the images used in this poem? So they give you a big hint right here in this line that I highlighted for you. So joy at the beginning, sadness at the end, sadness at the beginning, joy at the end, or fear at the beginning and calmness at the end. I'll eliminate this one. It's got to be one of these two. Just pause my video and read this sentence. They basically give you the answer. And then go on to number 5. It says read the poem Your Little Voice and answer the question that follows. Select 3 specific images from the poem that reflect the joyous yet sad feelings used in the poem. So we have before my eyes, looked up, time and tide and death, how I cried, and then over the wires came leaping. So remember, we are looking for words that reflect the joyous yet sad feelings. Remember, joy means happy. So I will do one of these for you. You need to select 3. Let's see, over the wires came leaping. I'm going to select this one because leaping, in my mind, has an image of happiness or joy. All right, so you need to choose 2 more answers here that might reflect either joy or very deep sadness. Okay? And then when you get finished, go ahead and move on to the next lesson.